Yo, 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 what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Legacy Foundation for Human Progress, the planetary headquarters for all of your celestial information. And tonight, we are doing a Forbidden Scrolls live. How lucky are we? How lucky is everybody, man? We usually only record Forbidden Scrolls, but we're doing it live today. We're going to read, we're going to talk, and we're going to dive deep into the concept of Adam and Eve. Who was Adam and Eve? Their story is extremely cryptic in the Bible. Were they the first people or were they not? We're going to unravel the mystery tonight and we're going to have fun while doing it. So strap up your seatbelt. We are going for a ride. For all the new people tuning in, I hope you guys enjoy the style. We like to talk about really deep and important truths, but we also like to make it lighthearted too. So forgive the bad jokes. You don't have to laugh at all of them, but I hope you guys enjoy. And to everybody that's returning, you know the deal. D-Bake the Wise, Magma Sloth, Tay Chilla. We're about to get into it. So we are going to read from, of course, the Urantia book again. You can call us blue bookers, whatever. It's it has so much good stuff, so many juicy nuggets. And we feel like a lot of the concepts are kind of deep, so we're going to try to translate them into modern phraseology so that people can understand it. I do want to remind you guys to hit that subscribe if you guys are watching this and this is your second, third time and you look down, that button isn't pressed yet. What are you doing? Rub up against that subscribe button and do me a favor and hit it. And don't forget to press that little thumbs up, that little like button. It helps us get to the front page so that other people can see, can be exposed to the truth. I don't know. Adam and Eve. A lot of people know the Adam and Eve story. I was brought up a Catholic, so I definitely know the Adam and Eve story. I was taught that they were the first people, that everybody descended from them. That is, I guess, what modern theology or theologians also consider to be the truth. And I guess tonight we're here to throw a monkey wrench in those thoughts. We're here to tell you that they weren't the first people. They were actually extraterrestrials. There, we'll just dive into the weeds
with some nuance, but we got it.
Aliens.
Yeah. It's pretty interesting. It's equally interesting as the alien that you think of in your mind when we say that word. It's something even more interesting, and it still fits the definition, right? But there's a lot of nuance, and we think that's where a lot of the value of this sort of hidden, unknown history lies. So, no matter what background, like D-Bake said, if you're Catholic, you obviously know Adam and Eve. The Christians know about Adam and Eve. The Jewish religion, obviously, it's their story. It's their scrolls, Genesis, the Adam and Eve. This story has shaped a worldview from centuries, thousands of years ago. However long Genesis is, I think some people say that's probably during the time of Moses. That's like the common conception, is that Moses put together the first, couple books of the Bible. And yeah, I mean, just think of how much influence those origin stories have on our world when so many people believe in it. And so what we're going to go into is a unique resource that basically expands it, far more than you have ever asked, it to be explained. And to me, when I read the story, what it did is, I guess you could say it took the myth and the symbolism. There's obviously a moral story within Genesis, even if we recognize that it's a summary of events. It doesn't explain absolutely everything. The way that it talks about God creating things is a little bit poetic. People argue, was it a literal 7 days, or does it even matter? What are, those are the types of questions that come up because modern readers tend to look at it like super literally, and then some people are more like only the symbology. What we're going to go over is a story that actually brings it all together, that makes it make sense. So, yeah, Tyler, any thoughts on this?
Yeah, the Adam and Eve story is shared across all the Abrahamic religions, Christianity, Islam, Judaism. It's expressed in the Baha'i faith as well. and I believe it's dated to around the 5th century BC, something like that. Um, at least in written form. But as the story was told through oral tradition, it could have gone far beyond that date, deep into the past. Um, because it shares so many elements of Sumerian symbolism, it's often attributed to possibly being a Sumerian story. Um, Interestingly, there are engravings of the Tree of Life, the Tree of Knowledge, um, across ancient cultures all over the world, from China to Turkey to even Utah, ancient petroglyphs. This Tree of Life shows up everywhere. It's pretty mysterious. Um, but as to the whole thing about like them being the first person, I mean, like, there's this whole thing, the Y chromosomal Adam and the mitochondrial Eve, where through genetic testing, scientists have determined there probably is a shared ancestor that all humans, modern humans, stem from. Um, we could kind of rope that into this story we're about to unfold here. That, it could be we share a genetic lineage to some extraterrestrial uplifters, so it kind of scratches all those itches of the religious folk, the ancient aliens folk, the new age starseeds out there. So yeah, we're gonna lay out everything you've ever wanted to know about Adam and Eve, but were afraid to ask.
Well put. Well put. For the viewers out there, not to correct you, Tachila, but it was Abraham that first started compiling it all. Yeah, Moses started compiling like a different part, but it definitely first started with Abram. It's funny. I just want to get something off my chest. So I was thinking about it today. A lot of people talk about anti-Semitism today. And I think that's such a stupid word because Semitism refers to Semitic religions, which is Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. So if you're an anti-Semite, it means you're anti all of those. Actually, Semitism means any religion that started in East Asia. So it includes like Canaanite, Hittite religions like that existed in the Middle East previous to Judeo-Christian religions. So stop using this word anti-Semitism like you're a pinky up, elegant, I'm smart, I know what I'm talking about. Like you're misusing it, but whatever. I just want to get that off my chest.
Well, yeah, it's kind of funny being a Christian anti-Semite or a Muslim anti-Semite when your entire belief system
is based off the Semitic religion.
On the Semitic religion, yeah. So without the Jews, the Christians don't have a religion anyway. So we're kind of all in this boat. We got to figure it out.
But yeah, I just wanted to get that off my chest because we're trying to educate you guys, mind, body, spirit, trying to hit your potential. So when you're out there talking, make sure you know what you're talking about. That's why we make this channel. We know what we're talking about. We're going to give you the inside scoop on Adam and Eve. So just a little background so that you kind of, me, I like to paint mental pictures in your brain, baby. That's what I'm doing. I'm Picasso with the brain matter. That was a crazy image. Yeah. I want to give you guys a little precursor so that you can understand, give you a lens in which to view this concept from. But a little background. So our planets get seeded. We're not the only intelligent beings in the universe, okay? Think of panspermia, but on a higher level, like what Watson and Crick talked about. They talked about directed panspermia. Watson and Crick, they were the people who discovered the DNA double helix, so they're very important. So we should listen to what they say. They talked about directed panspermia, or that like the DNA double helix was actually brought here by intelligent beings because there's no way it would have evolved on planet Earth. These are the guys who founded the human DNA sequence. So think of that panspermia, or even think of angelic being itself bringing that first single cell to a planet. But, if people want to think about it like that, imagine that first cell hitching a ride on a meteor to planet Earth, and it hits. And then it seeds evolution, right? Once evolution kicks off, everything happens like we know. Darwinism, evolution, survival of the fittest, natural selection. That happens, and then biological man appears. Angels are overwatching this entire process because they were the ones who seeded it. But one biological man appears in the middle of the woods, from lemurs, by the way, not monkeys. We'll go into that later. When biological man appears, it kind of sends off like a bat signal, boom, to the cosmos. And the cosmos says, okay, man has appeared on that planet, planet 606. That's our planet, planet 606 of Satania. And when that signal goes up, they send a representative that is in the form of the local population. So a humanoid that looks like us. And they're called the Adamic race. They get sent in a pair called Adam and Eve. And they were the first two, I guess you would say,
Cosmic template?
celestial template male and female pair in a human form that we got on planet Earth. We did get other celestials, such as the Anunnaki. Go watch the other videos. We already made an entire series about that. And those are other celestials that landed before Adam and Eve. And they were also male and female. But they weren't really based off of the celestial template. It was a little bit of a different thing. We're not going to get into it. But so Adam and Eve, they were like the perfected celestial humanoid template. And they get sent down as representatives to those humans that pop up. So there's evolutionary humans and then the celestial Adamic race. And they're not supposed to mate directly. The Adamic race, they're supposed to have like 500 generations or 500 kids. And at the 500th generation, then those people start mating with the local population. And we'll get more into the detail as we read the story, but I'm just trying to give you a mental image of what we're talking about here. So yeah, we're talking like cosmic planetary seeding, cosmic government, and that evolution is a byproduct. It's a template. This is a process, a divine process that has been initiated by celestial beings. So you are a byproduct of a very unique and special process, is what we're hinting at here. And you need to recognize it. That's why we made this channel, so that you can hit your potential mentally, physically, and spiritually. And we want to let you know how the reality that you perceive currently, just by watching this video, came to be. And we're trying to tell you the beings that were involved in the process of getting you, to this point. So let's dive into this. Let's start reading.
Yeah. I'll just say, there are many interpretations of the Adam and Eve story across all the religious offshoots. Different groups of Christians will have different ideas of who Adam and Eve was. Generally, Christians will take the story very literally. They were the first humans. Then, of course, you get people who take it a little more symbolically. I remember there's a book, Ishmael, that described the whole Adam and Eve story in symbolic terms, which was pretty interesting. I mean, the symbolism is very deep. Notwithstanding, like even if it was an actual event, but there was also a CIA document. Well, it was actually a book that was hidden by the CIA called The Adam and Eve Story. That's a very interesting one. It's talking about a cyclical cataclysm, and it takes Adam and Eve to represent symbolic metaphors of plasmatic interactions in the atmosphere during a cataclysm.
George.
Yeah, it's some wild stuff. But out of all the different Adam and Eve stories out there, and I mean, I just want to be clear, that's a very interesting subject, probably deserves its own episode even. But out of all the Adam and Eve stories we've encountered, this one right here in the Urantia book has got to be hands down the most interesting Adam and Eve story. So, I mean, whatever you make with it, believe it or not, just kind of keep an open mind and take it as a story, because it's definitely one of the coolest stories regarding Adam and Eve that I think I've ever encountered.
Yeah, and for the Christians out there, there were two first humans, and we did all come from them. It just wasn't Adam and Eve. Their names are Andon and Fanta. We'll get into that later. Adam and Eve were the first two celestial template human beings. But there was the first two human beings that we all stem from. We're not denying that, but I don't know. You guys got anything else to say before we jump into it?
Yeah, I got just a couple things where, if you have a sort of formal background from, like we said, Judaism, Catholicism, or Christianity, just know that even within all those groups, there's a lot of interpretations about the Adam and Eve story and if Adam and Eve were the literal first humans or not. So, if you're not aware of that, I encourage you to go ahead and look that up. Because there's already factions within Christianity and theologians who will say, yeah, like there could have been other humans, before Adam and Eve. The reason they think that is the only humans is, if you're very literal and reading Genesis, there's like genealogies and stuff. And so they're sort of assuming that that's like all the people that exist, and then it just gets to Noah, and then the whole thing gets reset. And so, I guess it'd be convenient if that history was like absolute, literally true. But just keep in mind that how old is the writing of the text? What's the oldest scroll that we have? And then go, okay, most of modern science is telling us that the Earth is like 200,000 plus years old. Like, just look at the sort of numbers. And so I just want to point out that no matter which side you're on, even if you're like young Earth creationist, there's a dichotomy here. There's a
6,000 years. That's it.
Right. There's a tension. And all we want you to do is to understand the side of the story that you already know and be curious about the sides of the story that you haven't heard. Because once you look at all the perspectives, you can start to really, I think, decide like, oh yeah, maybe in the past I saw it a little too leaning this way, but now I'm incorporating concepts from this field and this field. And at the end of the day, all of these explanations they're stories, and there's different ways you can try and validate them. But again, they're talking about events happening a long time ago. And so to me, what I'm actually looking for when I'm searching for a lot of truth is I'm going to look at all the stories, and one, what's the most cohesive? And then other ones I'm going to be like, okay, this one's like it's much more of like a summary, and to assess, you really have to look at everything and don't be too crystallized in your clique, whichever group, you grew up in or were raised with. Because again, you ask the theologians and they'll admit that there's different interpretations and we don't exactly know. And there's even a question of, did the writers of Genesis, how much did they actually know? Where did they get the story from? What's the lineage of how that got passed to them? Because, you might just assume that God whispered it in their ear, but that's a sort of second question about how was the Bible written? What's the definition of divine inspiration? What is the role of humans in writing the Bible? And what is the role of God and the angels and divine beings in writing the Bible? Where does all this information really come from? And, that can take a sort of open-minded perspective to even look past, whatever your mainstream or religion has taught you. But, if you're already here watching this video, you're probably curious enough to hear what we got to say. So that's my kind of last premise here.
Well, yeah, I'll just say that's a great point, Taylor. With the, we've mentioned this before, but with most ancient stories and myths, it's this game of telephone over thousands of years. Oral tradition, before there was systematic writing and books, literature, and archives, you just had the village elder who would pass down the story they heard when they were kids to the next generation. And over so many generations, it becomes more and more of a story. They add elements based on their own culture, a lot of symbolism and lessons and all that. But a lot of these ancient stories that have been preserved over time do seem to represent echoes of a distant event that's just kind of morphed over time. But yeah, a lot of those concepts, like D-Bick, you're touching on evolution, doesn't necessarily have to exist in contrast to religious living or religious thought. Just as the great band Devo said, God made man, but he used a monkey to do it. Like, we can have differentiated species, intelligently designed, but evolution is still the process angels use to adapt life to any given world. And once that life is at an apex, you have anatomically modern humans. The stage is set for biologic uplifters.
Oh yeah, space freaks. The Celestials come
They
in
are
and
space freaks.
they fuck the local population. I mean, that's kind of weird to think about it. It is. These guys fly around the galaxy looking for planets. Second that people come,
Get it on.
they want the sex so bad they literally create bodies to go down and smash. It's kind of funny. It's kind of crazy. I don't know what mission that is, but
they're getting it from high up.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a way to put it. Even in Genesis, what's the command from God? Be fruitful and multiply. So, you could say it 1,000 different ways. Whether using the modern terms or whatever. But there's a real kind of crazy mission, on this planet that humans are involved in, and there's a lot of different motivations and possibilities here.
So I do want to jump into the reading because I know we can bore you guys all day long just saying our opinions on it. But let's get to the cold hard facts. That's right. The blue Urantia book is the cold hard facts. I'm saying this before it becomes normal.
That's right.
So
this will be standard someday.
Before we jump into it, I do want to read from Genesis 4:16-26. You ain't got to pull it up. I'll just read it. But it's even in the Bible. Everybody who knows like theology and really understands the Bible understands this passage. There's a lot of contradictions in the Bible, loopholes, holes, plot holes.
Land of Nod.
Like it's a story. The land of Nod, yes. And Cain went out from the presence of the Lord and dwelt in the land of Nod, on the east of Eden. And Cain knew his wife, and she conceived and bore Enoch. And he builded a city and called the name of the city after the name of his son, Enoch. So that's from the Cain and Abel story. If you're not hip to Adam and Eve, they had kids, Cain and Abel. Cain killed Abel. Yep. Sucks. So Cain killed Abel, and they banished Cain. So if Adam and Eve were the first two people on planet Earth, and then they had kids, Cain and Abel, that means there was only 4 people. And then if Cain killed Abel, how did he leave and already go to an established place called the land of Nod?
That's true.
Already a civilization, and he found a wife. So that means there was other humans on the planet, even in the Adam and Eve story, directly in the Bible. So what we're saying isn't too crazy, people. We'll just give you a new hot angle with it. All right. So let's do it. From the Urantia book, paper 74, Adam and Eve. Adam and Eve arrived on Urantia from the year AD 1934, 37,848 years ago. It was in mid-season when the garden was in the height of bloom that they arrived. At high noon and unannounced, the 2 seraphic transports, accompanied by the Jerusalem personnel entrusted with the transportation of the biologic uplifters to Urantia, settled slowly to the surface of the revolving planet in the vicinity of the Temple of the Universal Father. All the work of rematerializing the bodies of Adam and Eve was carried on within the precincts of this newly created shrine. And from the time of their arrival, 10 days passed before they were recreated in dual human form for presentation as the world's new rulers. They regained consciousness simultaneously. The material sons and daughters always serve together. It is the essence of their service at all times and in all places, never to be separated. They are designed to work in pairs. Seldom do they function alone. That's pretty cool right there. A little bit of lore, some insight. It almost gives you a glimpse on being there. You're like, wait, what? Mid-season in the garden, 37,000, damn near 38,000 years ago. When I first read the Urantia book, that's what blew me away. That narrative and you're like, wait,
That narrative.
no human could have been there. This is how are you saying it so confidently? And you're like, oh, duh, it's a celestial transmission.
That's what I love so much about this is how it sets the mood and it tells a story that's very captivating. It gets you into it. Now, for any listeners who are unfamiliar with the Urantia book, when it says, they arrived on Urantia, that's the name of our world. So the Urantia book is the Earth book. It was brought into formation throughout the early 30s. It was sat on for a decade due to political stuff. Finally published thanks to some handy donations in the 50s. But so that's from 1934. When it's talking about that temple, they're created in the temple. A little pretext in some previous papers is talking about a group of humans that were kind of preparing thanks to some celestial guidance for the arrival of Adam and Eve. So they actually kind of built the basic foundation of the garden and the temple. And I really wonder what was
The
going on in that.
Anunnaki.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, they were like the non-rebellious members of the rebellious staff. And, it's talking about, like, what was it, 3 days? They were getting rematerialized. Their bodies were getting made
10 days.
10 days,
Took them
that's right.
10 days.
What did that look like? Was it just like, bones with like flesh wrapping around it,
Oh, that's crazy to think about. Yeah, you're right. What did that look
fetuses, like embryos just developing in the air, hovering there?
You're right. Like if you were able to walk right near it, it'd probably be extremely glowing ball of light, And then as you like walk through the glowing ball of light, could you start to see like the flesh and the bone materializing slowly? That'd be crazy. I don't know. Because they need real bodies. You'd have to see the fucking. That'd be crazy. Yeah. So that's pretty cool. Took them 10 days. No big deal. Would have took me 6. Whatever.
Magna, you're coming in a little bit choppy. D-Bake, is he like that for you? Was he like kind of glitchy a little bit?
I haven't noticed.
You haven't? Okay.
I haven't noticed.
I'll mention it again if it continues to get worse. But I didn't know
Let me
if
know.
there's
I'll
anything.
check my levels.
Yeah, I don't know if that's a good point. I don't know if
know.
it's your audio, if it's like that gain thing, or if it's just the internet. But go ahead and check what you can, and we'll keep going here.
Either or. Turn down my sensitivity here. That could be it. All right, that might be better.
Oh shit! What's up? Trainwreck, Adrian, and Elizabeth. Oh, we got people from the server in here. What's going on?
All right.
What's going on, guys?
Welcome.
Join the Discord server. Link should be in the description. If it's not, it's in the about of the YouTube channel if you want to keep the conversation going. We got it's a wild west over there. So if you got thoughts, join up. And again, if you're this far and you're liking what we're saying, make sure you already hit that subscribe button and make sure you hit that little like button right now. Just a little finger swipe. Boom. Hit that thing and it'll help us get to the front page. So Adam and Eve on Jerusalem. So it is not, this isn't from the Urantia book, but this is my point of view. I like to say it's the Legacy point of view, but Jerusalem is Orion. That's where you wake up after you die. That's
Not
my
confirmed.
theory. Not confirmed. I'm connecting the Keys of Enoch and the Urantia book together. All right. So Adam and Eve on Orion.
But that is worth mentioning that Jerusalem, for those that don't know, is a celestial headquarters world. And the idea is, real briefly, when you die, you wake up, you have a body materialized for you because there's an infrastructure to the afterlife. It's not just accidental. There's actually this vast organization behind it.
Yep.
You wake up on the first mansion world. There are these architectural made-to-order worlds. There's 7 of them orbiting around as satellite worlds, orbiting around this capital, Jerusalem. And this entire system, this Urantia, what do you call it? Satellite structure. There's one of these in each local system, and a local system is like 100 worlds. So within our entire Milky Way galaxy, there's probably hundreds of these types of systems. But yeah, when you wake up in the afterlife, you might see some aliens in heaven. Just throwing it out there. There's gonna be like 100 other races.
Well, to put it more directly, you will be
real.
the alien in heaven. Because
exactly,
it's not your
at
heaven.
You like you're the alien. It's not your heaven.
You're arriving on their. It's not the only
Exactly.
resident. You're not like, and that's because we have that, it's that centralized
That
Earth theory that we're at the
human-centric.
center of everything.
Yeah.
There's gonna be aliens in our heaven, where it's like, well,
They're gonna look at you like, shut up, you're the alien,
yeah,
dog.
exactly.
Like, you're new here. We've been here, dude. Shut up.
That's right.
Right. But yeah, no, we get to basically, like, in the afterlife. Okay, so get the basic premise idea is like mortal planetary beings. We grow up in bodies that relate to the animal species. We're obviously related to mammals. Like, just keep that in your mind. Like, okay, why are we related to all the physical, other species here? And then there's also the sort of what we just call the spiritual world, and we consider the angels and God exist there. But, it's much more complex and nuanced than just separating it into, those two categories. And so, when we basically there's a part of our mind and our experiences that survive after death, and we generally call that the soul, and that part of survival of the mind and consciousness is reinstated into a somewhat, you could say, higher dimension that the Urantia book terms Morantial, and those are the afterlife worlds, the afterlife experience. It's the journey of eternal life that is so talked about, in the Judaic traditions and stuff. So, yeah, we're going to meet a lot of other people and beings from not just our planet, because we're not the only planet. It's as simple as that.
Yep. And that is where Adam and Eve is from. They're sent from Jerusalem. But we have to realize they're a little bit different. They're not just like all the people that die and go to the mansion worlds. Those are evolutionary beings that we lived and evolved. We were kind of spawned or generated in the cosmos.
Yeah, this was
Adam and Eve. Point. Yeah, this is our starting point. Adam and Eve, they didn't start on an evolutionary planet. They started in a celestial realm. So they were like divine. They're the divine human pattern. They would be called the Adamic pattern or the Adamic template. We're just saying humans because we're human, but they're the divine pattern. And they come down. So they would be considered descending sons of the God on the universe scale, and we would be considered ascending sons of God. But let's keep going. Plowing ahead. Adam and Eve on Jerusalem. The planetary Adam and Eve of Urantia were members of the senior core of the material sons on Jerusalem, being jointly number 14,311. They belonged to the third physical series and were a little more than 8 feet in height. Tall motherfuckers, dude.
Yeah.
At the time Adam was chosen to come to Urantia, he was employed with his mate in the trial and testing physical laboratories of Jerusalem. For more than 15,000 years, they had been directors of the Division of Experimental Energy as applied to the modification of living forms. Sounds like some Bob Lazar shit.
Yeah.
Long before this, they had been teachers in the citizenship schools for new arrivals on Jerusalem. And all this should be borne in mind in connection with the narration of their subsequent conduct on Urantia.
They're obviously pretty happy with their position in their occupation, working in the same place for 15,000 years. I mean, they're doing what they love doing at that rate.
Yeah, and they were directors of the Division of Experimental Energy applied to modification of living forms. Like,
very interesting.
That's like what Keys of Enoch Hurtak is doing with like biomorphic fields, the electromagnetics, and like watching like cells replicate on different patterns and stuff. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Academy for Future Science. Shout out JJ. Shout out Desiree. Come on the podcast. The proclamation was issued calling for volunteers for the mission of the Adamic adventure on Urantia. The entire senior core of material sons and daughters volunteered. The Melchizedek examiners, with the approval of Lanaforge and the Most High's Evidentia, finally selected the Adam and Eve who subsequently came to function as the biologic uplifters of Urantia. So when they say material sons and daughters, that's just another way of saying Adam and Eve's.
Mm.
They use it interchangeably. So if you hear me say material sons and daughters, who's that? They're referring to Adam and Eve. Melchizedek examiners, Melchizedek from the Bible, that's a different type of celestial. So Adam and Eve, the Adamites are one type of celestial. Melchizedek's would be a different type of celestial.
There's a ton of them.
There's a ton of different types. The list of celestial personalities is longer than humans have existed on planet Earth from the beginning to the end. There's a lot of them. So let's keep going. Adam and Eve had remained loyal to Michael during the Lucifer rebellion. Nevertheless, the pair were called before the system sovereign and his entire cabinet for examination and instruction. The details of Urantia affairs were fully presented. They were exhaustively instructed as to the plans to be pursued in accepting the responsibilities of rulership on such a strife-torn world. They were put under joint oaths of allegiance to the Most Highs of Urantia and to Michael of Salvington. And they were duly advised to regard themselves as subject to the Urantia Corps of Melchizedek receivers until that governing body should see fit to relinquish rule on the world of their assignment. This Jerusalem pair left behind them on the capital of Satania and elsewhere 100 offspring, 50 sons and 50 daughters, magnificent creatures who had escaped the pitfalls of progression, and who were all in the pitfalls of progression. I don't like how they put that. And who were all in commission as faithful stewards of universe trust at the time of their parents' departure for Urantia. And they were all present in the beautiful temple of the material sons, attendant upon the farewell exercises associated with the last ceremonies of the bestowal acceptance. These children accompanied their parents to the dematerialization headquarters of their order and were the last to bid them farewell and divine speed as they fell asleep in the personality lapse of consciousness, which precedes the preparation for seraphic transport. The children spent time together at the family rendezvous, rejoicing that their parents were soon to become the visible heads, in reality the sole rulers of planet 606 in the system of Satania. And thus did Adam and Eve leave Jerusalem amidst the acclaim and well-wishing of its citizens. They went forth to their new responsibilities, adequately equipped and fully instructed concerning every duty and danger to be encountered on Urantia.
Very cool.
Okay. Yep. So it's kind of funny how they talk about their kids. When Adam and Eve have kids, like I wonder, like do they adjust? Are they adjust? No, they're not adjust or indwell. It's just that's an interesting process for whatever they are.
Spirit fused or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah. But it says that they escaped the pitfalls of progression. So because they were born into perfection. So like they didn't have to go through evolutionary progression. That's kind of interesting.
Is that what that's saying? Okay, because I interpreted that like despite being born on the Urantia worlds, even though life is good enough, you're in heaven, you're pretty well satiated. There's enough challenges presented that you still kind of have to overcome hurdles because you're constantly progressing. But you're right. I think that's the way to interpret it is like, because they were born there, not here, they escaped the pitfalls of progression that we had to go through to turn us into hardened badasses.
Let's say shout out to progression, dog. Keep me in the evolutionary spheres.
All right, I can take up this next one if you want.
Yes, sir. Number
2, arrival of Adam and Eve. Adam and Eve fell asleep on Jerusalem, and when they awakened in the Father's temple on Urantia, in the presence of the mighty throng assembled to welcome them, they were face to face with 2 beings of whom they had heard much, Van and his faithful associate Amadon. These 2 heroes of the Caligastia secession were the first to welcome them in their new garden home. The tongue of Eden was an Andonic dialect as spoken by Amadon. Van and Amadon had markedly improved this language by creating a new alphabet of 24 letters, and they had hoped to see it become the tongue of Urantia as the Edenic culture would spread throughout the world. Adam and Eve had fully mastered this human dialect before they departed from Jerusalem, so that this son of Andon heard the exalted ruler of his world address him in his own tongue. And on that day there was great excitement and joy throughout Eden, as the runners went in great haste to the rendezvous of the carrier pigeons assembled from near and far, shouting, "Let loose the birds! Let them carry the word that the promised son has come." Hundreds of believer settlements had faithfully, year after year, kept up the supply of these home-reared pigeons for just such an occasion. As the news of Adam's arrival spread abroad, thousands of the nearby tribesmen accepted the teachings of Van and Abaddon, while for months and months pilgrims continued to pour into Eden to welcome Adam and Eve and to do homage to their unseen father. Soon after their awakening, Adam and Eve were escorted to the formal reception on the great mound to the north of the temple. This natural hill had been enlarged and made ready for the installation of the world's new rulers. Here, at noon, the Urantia Reception Committee welcomed the son and daughter of the system of Satania. Amadon was chairman of this committee, which consisted of 12 members embracing a representative of each of the 6 Sangic races. The acting chief of the Midwayers, Anan, a loyal daughter and spokesman for the Nodites, Noah, the son of the architect and builder of the garden, and executive of his deceased father's plans, and the 2 resident life carriers. The next act was the delivery of the charge of planetary custody to Adam and Eve by the senior Melchizedek, chief of the Council of Receivership on Urantia. The material son and daughter took the oath of allegiance to the Most Highs of Norlashadek and to Michael of Nebadon, who were proclaimed rulers of Urantia by Van, who thereby relinquished the titular authority which for over 150,000 years he had held by virtue of the action of the Melchizedek receivers. And Adam and Eve were invested with kingly robes on this occasion, the time of their formal induction into world rulership. Not all of the arts of Dalmatia had been lost to the world. Weaving was still practiced in the days of Eden. Then was heard the archangel's proclamation, and the broadcast voice of Gabriel decreed the second judgment roll call of Urantia and the resurrection of the sleeping survivors of the second dispensation of grace and mercy on 606 of Satania. The dispensation of the prince has passed. The age of Adam, the third planetary epoch, opens amidst scenes of simple grandeur, and the new rulers of Urantia start their reign under seemingly favorable conditions, notwithstanding the worldwide confusion occasioned by lack of the cooperation of their predecessor in authority on the planet. Now, it's worth mentioning for anyone who hasn't seen the Lucifer Rebellion episode, please do check it out. Hopefully all of y'all are familiar enough with that story. 500,000 BC, give or take, extraterrestrials touched down, and they weren't gray aliens. They were the Anunnaki, the prince's staff, the staff of 100. What was it? Anunnaki, like the word breaks down like the prince's staff. I believe On was like the prince, something like that.
It's the heavenly, the princely staff of the sky prince Anu.
That's it. Yeah. Yeah. And, that should have set things right. On a normal world out there in the cosmos, this would happen on that world. Conditions would be just right. You would have these humanoids that had evolved from animals. They're like basically anatomically modern humans. And, you get this like planetary prince that comes down with the staff to uplift the culture, build up the city, teach humans art, industry, metalworking, construction, agriculture, all that stuff. When that happened on our world, that prince's staff had defaulted. They joined in on the Lucifer Rebellion, which was this sweeping charge across our little sector of space that this whole evolutionary scheme is a waste of resources, a waste of time, and it all fell apart. So when Adam and Eve touched down on our world, they didn't really have the same conditions set up, like ideally, that they would have on any other world. With our little cluster of rebellious worlds that, we share that status with some of our neighboring planets out there. Our cosmic government, our local cosmic government is kind of on its own. And thankfully, there were some loyal members of that staff that had kind of carried the torch for hundreds of thousands of years. I believe Adam and Eve touched down, what was it, like 150,000 to 250,000 BC, something like that.
Adam and Eve?
Yeah.
It just said it was like 38,000 years ago.
Okay, there you go. So that's a long time. Like, the prince's staff, the loyal members, had managed to preserve the remnants of civilization on Earth, and it didn't totally fall apart. So, so far so good.
Let's pause for a quick sec. So, because the viewers are hearing magma like kind of like glitchy in the way that I'm here. So just to confirm, Dedrick, you don't hear it. It's not like that on your end. You don't hear magma's like kind of glitchy, like it's like a.
I don't really hear any glitchy, but I could see how, because we have like
I do need
mics, it would sound a little bit different. Is it facing?
Let's just check. Yeah, I want to check a few things quick, and then I'm gonna leave and rejoin, and then Magma, you also leave and rejoin and see if that helps. But so just to confirm like your mic settings, and then the only other thing I can think to do, because it could also be, you guys are close to each other, but I'm a couple states away, so maybe that's it. It's just coming through on my end. But yeah, I need to. We want to kind of solve this because it is, Adrian noticed it as well. He said, "Magma, you need a new mic," but we're pretty sure it's not your mic. That's bad. It's just something with the connection here. So yeah, I'm gonna leave and rejoin, and then you should also try that.
But it also may just be the fact that we have like, dynamic mics close to our face, and he has like something but far away from his face. It sounds like on Zoom when like somebody glitches and then it speeds up to catch up to what they said. That's what it sounds like. It's pretty obviously it's a different thing that we haven't had it happen like this before. But it's happening very consistently as he's talking. And if we can,
could be an internet issue.
It could be, but it's weird that D-Bake doesn't hear it because it's pretty noticeable. And that's why I'm thinking, I don't know if it's just because I'm in a different location, but yeah, keep talking, Magma. And we'll see here.
There we go. I changed the setting on my mic. I also changed the USB port in case it was that USB port. It's a little finicky.
Yeah.
I know this
it sounds better already.
Sometimes.
That one actually sounds cleaner. It already sounds cleaner.
Good.
What setting did you change? Did you take it off cardioid?
Yeah, it's just like spherical now. Yeah, I had it on like cardioid with the two bubbles.
You normally do want cardioid. Spherical will take in sound from behind you, but it sounds okay right now. So I don't know if that was the issue.
Back to cardioid real quick.
Testing. 1, 2, 3. Blah, blah,
the lights are facing you. Damn.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would keep
it's
it on
the top of the mic, is it?
Spherical. That's spherical right there.
That's weird.
I just have to roll.
Let's not bore the viewers. Sorry,
guys.
I think
we're good. We got the main issue fixed. So.
Cool. All right. Hey, Chilla, you want to pick up where I left off?
So we're on section 3.
I think that last paragraph that you read actually, it's gnarly. It kind of gives you some insight onto how bureaucratic the cosmos is. you know, there's a bunch of
Yeah.
like committees. The son and daughter of Satania, Amadon was the chairman of this committee. They name drop a lot, like Noah and stuff. But the main thing is that I want people to understand, because if you're like, I don't know what the fuck you guys are talking about, like Magma said, go watch the Anunnaki series that we dropped. It's on the channel. But pretty much the first Celestials that landed, they rebelled. And when they rebelled, it kind of made the planet all crazy. They had the planet for a good almost, what, 200,000 years, something like that?
Yeah.
And then Eve and Adam popped up. So that the first Celestials that rebelled, they had control of the planet for a really long time. And then Adam and Eve showed up, and they inherited a planet that was pretty much like, imagine if you just get a bunch of like teenagers in a mansion. What it's going to look like? It's going to look like shit. So
Yeah.
that's what they inherited. So let's pick up from there.
What was it? I had a thought there that you were talking about. So yeah, I wanted to point out here. There's a term that the Bible uses that actually we kind of gets translated and we almost miss it. In the English translation, and the term is, when you see it says sons of God. This term is I was looking up a sort of AI overview. The term is B'nai Elohim, or the sons of Elohim. You've probably heard Elohim in the context of like another name for God. The same God the Father. In the Bible, there's different names.
That's what Herchak calls them, the B'nai Elohim, the B'nai Or.
Yeah. And like, to understand that, from the biblical perspective, there actually is a precedence for, some of these things we're talking about, these celestial beings landing and interacting with humanity and creating hybrid species. And, obviously the biggest example is the Nephilim narrative. And the term it uses is, sons of God there. And there's different interpretations on what the term means, and historically people have thought that meant, the Christians think that meant angels, some sort of angelic beings mating with humans and creating a race of giants, the mighty men of old, the Nephilim. However, when you read the Urantia story, it begins to make much more sense. The sons of God is generally a large overarching term that does not apply to only angels. And so the sons of God that created the Nephilim were actually a humanoid-looking being. And that's what we're talking about when we say the term Anunnaki, because the Sumerians knew about this type of story, about these sort of star people that were different from the native populations and had a massive effect on creating the ruling classes, etc., and creating, the kingly lineages. And so that's like this whole
reptilian
arc.
Bloodlines.
Yeah, no, reptilian. The Urantia book doesn't talk about reptilian bloodlines, but the
Oh, it does.
Yeah, right.
Paper 197, dude.
197.
But I guess
CIA took out that paper.
what I'm getting to here is that there's like a story behind the story, and like there's a lot of mysteries that this story in the Urantia book really kind of solves and brings an actually believable and actually conceivable concept to. Like it makes sense in terms of both science and philosophy and ancient history, and it also takes away that mythological element to what happened. When we're like, we don't know if the sons of God means angel or just whatever. Like when we don't know, it's because it's too, like, the summary, it's too old and it's too summarized, and there's arguments about like what the original writers meant, and it's just so far ago. But then when you see it explained like this, and it really levels the playing field. So I think that's really what I wanted to say there. There's a couple other mentions, and references about this term "sons of God" used in the Bible. One of them is in the Job story, where it depicts the sons of God presenting themselves before Yahweh with Satan among them, suggesting that there's like a heavenly assembly or divine council. And that's another example of where angelic beings are technically can also be considered sons of God. Sons of God is generally just like, okay, here's all the kids that God created. Some of them are human, mortal species, some of them are angels, and then some of them are these celestial humanoids that we're talking about, the material sons and daughters, the descending sons. So yeah, there's like the context is already there. So this is not as new as you think. It's just we haven't had clear answers before.
Exactly. Yeah. We've got it in distorted, garbled forms in the past, and it's honestly breathtaking to think about how these ancient humans even got a glimpse into this reality.
Yeah.
Like, we're over here with technology. We met each other, online through similar interests and stuff like that. They didn't have that back then. How were they getting their information? They're probably fucking channeling it, or word of mouth stories directly from Melchizedek and Adam and Eve,
Yeah,
And by
for sure.
channeling, I mean, they would say, like, I got a vision from God, same shit.
Yep. The psychic potential in man that is so scoffed at by modern humans who feel we're so sophisticated and scientific about everything. But guess what? It's coming back. The UAP stuff is bringing all the psychic stuff right into the forefront. So anyway, side tangent. So here we go about Adam and Eve learn about the planet. What is, when they got here, what did they arrive to and what did they think? So, and now, after their formal installation, Adam and Eve became painfully aware of their planetary isolation.
Oh.
Silent were the familiar broadcasts, and absent were all the circuits of extraplanetary communication. Their Jerusalem fellows had gone to worlds running along smoothly with a well-established planetary prince and an experienced staff ready to receive them and competent to cooperate with them during their early experience on such worlds. But on Urantia, rebellion had changed everything. Here, the planetary prince was very much present, and though shorn of most of his power to work evil, he was still able to make the task of Adam and Eve difficult, and to some extent hazardous. It was a serious and disillusioned son and daughter of Jerusalem who walked that night through the garden under the shining of the full moon, discussing plans for the next day. So what is happening here? Remember,
That's pretty much explaining exactly what we just spent so long explaining right there.
But this adds a new
because
element
we had to
that
explain what we needed to. Yeah, we had to explain it so that we could understand what's happening now. But yeah, hit that.
Right. So yeah, obviously what I'm talking about is, what are they talking about, this planetary prince thing and the circuits being cut off that they were used to having access to. So remember, in the Genesis story, when Adam and Eve were placed on the planet and given their mission, Satan, the adversary, Satan is a word that means adversary, is already in the garden and tempting them. So you could say Adam and Eve are the first humans, but allegedly the angels or there's rebellious entities already there as well. So
Already
like,
there,
what
you're right.
is the backdrop of what's happening? The Bible doesn't clearly explain that. It's only in these moments, in these other moments, where we start to hear about these rebellious angels. John's vision in Revelation talks a lot about this, but that's in the New Testament. What did they know in the Old Testament about rebellious angels? Well, there's another big missing piece, the book of Enoch, which is, at the time of Jesus, all the scholars knew about the book of Enoch, which means that you should also read the book of Enoch, because it helps you understand some of their worldview, some of their information that, didn't get canonized in the Bible, after the times of Jesus. Because the book of Enoch also talks about the rebellious angels. Yeah, didn't make the edit. And so, yeah, there's this whole story of like rebellion and fall even before the arrival of Adam and Eve. And so what this paragraph is talking about is that, Adam and Eve and their friends on Jerusalem in the heavenly spheres, they're in a class together. All their friends are like going out and volunteering on missions on worlds that haven't been affected by the Lucifer angelic
That's so sick.
rebellion. But Earth is one of 36 or 37 planets that was affected by this rebellion that was angelic in origin and happened a couple 100,000 years ago in the cosmos. So that's the backdrop of this story. And so, yeah, they get here, and the planetary angel that's supposed to be leading this planet is basically on a free-for-all. He's implemented an entirely different program and set of rules for how he will operate and lead the planet and influence the populations, and that's really turned up the survivalism up a big notch, because those angel groups, alongside the Anunnaki, the sons of God that landed a long time before Adam and Eve, they were supposed to prepare the planet and create both a material civilization and a spiritual culture. And so now when you go read the book of Enoch, you notice how it says, Azazel taught the art of war. This other one taught the art of like how to beautify yourself and wield power. It talks about all these different things. One of them taught like spells and magic. Maybe something with consciousness and psychic abilities. There's like this whole story in this backdrop, and you're like, whoa. And so there was a lot of wild stuff that happened, and in the Bible, it uses the term, this prince term as well, in terms of angels, and it pops up a couple different times. I'm not going to go over it now, but we're just trying to make these connections for you. So that this is like, it's like the questions that this are answering exist. It's just, you might not know about those questions yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it is wild. I don't want to sound like we're talking about like we're on the Sci-Fi Channel, or like we're creating some like B movie or C movie, but no Sharknado, or like Sharknado versus Godzilla, those corny movies. But we're really actually talking about the Anunnaki versus Adam and Eve. No, it sounds like a sci-fi
The best movie, man.
movie, but that's literally what we're talking about. The Anunnaki, they fucked the planet up. And when they say Caligastia, or the planetary prince, they're referring to the Anunnaki. Anu, the sky father, the sky prince, that is Caligastia. So he's the leader of the Anunnaki, and he was still on planet trying to thwart the plans of Adam and Eve. So like Taychilla was referring to, that backdrop of already rebels in the garden, the celestial intergalactic war in heaven, all these data points that are brushed upon in the Bible, we're fleshing them out for you guys. So great way to stimulate those thoughts, Taychilla and Magma. What I got from reading this was it gives you insight onto where Adam and Eve's from, and also what they mean by planetary isolation. The very first thing they became aware of was the planetary isolation.
Yeah, first thing to sink in.
One, the rebellion happened 250,000 years ago when Caligastia said, fuck the cosmos, I'm going to run the planet the way I want to run it. When that happened, they cut off the celestial broadcast mechanisms, the cosmic news. When you wake up and watch the news, the same shit, but you get news from other planets.
Quarantine.
And then it says silent were the familiar broadcasts, and absent were all the circuits of extraplanetary communication. And that honestly, as a person, that makes planetary isolation sink in even more, because we're not even aware of it. We're just used to, this is how it is to us. This is normal. But actually, this is not the norm. Our planet is not the norm. On a regular planet, they have cosmic broadcasts. Every day they wake up and they're getting news from all the other planets. It's kind of gnarly to think about that you get grown up in that environment, even as a high celestial as Adam and Eve. Then when they put you in the the boondocks with no cell phone. That's pretty much what it is. They got no cell phone,
Yeah.
and they start tweaking out. I guess
You're on your
that
own.
silence, that planetary isolation really gets to you. And that's a really major point that the Urantia book tries to drive home. It says that growing up in that planetary isolation generates a special and specific type of divine personality that is extremely valued in the cosmic economy. So you growing up in this planetary isolation, you who will be strong with your life and stand up and help change our planetary economy, because I know you have it with you, within you, with us, together we can do this shit. When you grow up in this planetary isolation and you ascend after this physical life, you're going to have so much value, because 1 in a million planets get to grow up in isolation. I'm not saying it's fun. It is shitty, but that experience is so valuable. So, put your shoulders up a little bit, stick your chest out. Be happy that you're on a fucked up planet. It's going to be sick. You're going to have a badge of honor. Chicks dig scars.
That's right.
So
you notice on those shows like Naked and Afraid and stuff, that's something that really sinks into those people that become stranded and isolated out in the forest away from civilization. All the luxuries you're used to, it really starts to sink in. But I just gotta say, I would be camping out in front of the theater to see this movie. Adam and Eve versus the Anunnaki. It's gonna be the best damn movie. We're gonna make it.
Laser whips, swords. Say, Chili, you had something to say. You lost it.
Yeah,
I know. My
it's
laser
okay.
whips probably took it away. Yeah.
Yeah, no, but I'll just riff off of like what you're saying there. Like, and maybe this is so. How many of the staff weren't most of them dead already by the time Adam and Eve? Van was still there.
Yeah.
But how many of them do we know? How many were still alive at the point of the arrival of
That's
Adam
a
and
super
Eve?
good question. I do not know that. And were they able to live that long? I don't know.
I feel like it doesn't
I guarantee
say
you there's some
exactly when the
Urantia
original
nerd who's
staff
done all the math and is like, actually, I know there's someone out there.
Well,
I got
'cause
my boy, Mr.
It
Pink.
says that they lost
He knows.
when they lost the ability to live immortally because of the tree of life and different circuits. So
they weren't living more than 100,000 years, I don't think.
I guess that only worked for Van because of the tree. He still had the tree of life.
But wait a second. So was it like a battle for the tree of life?
Yeah.
Like if the rebels got the tree of life,
there might be a secret story there that is not fully revealed.
Oh wow, that'd be crazy, dog.
Battle for the tree of life, or like even just sneaking in like to steal one tree of life apple to like stay alive like for another 1,000 years.
Keep the squad up. Yeah. Oh fuck, dude. That'd be crazy. Like some drama where some girl's supposed to steal it. She gets the fruit, but doesn't bring it back to the rebels.
Keeps it for herself. They get
some drama, some side
infiltrate
stories.
Van society to get the fruit, to bring it back to the other.
That's a trippy thing to think about. There's some Urantia book reader who's fucking hitting their head right now, like, you idiots. No, that's not how it works.
Yeah, no, I'm sure there's a couple quotes that talk about that.
What we're saying is, how long did the Anunnaki live for before Adam and Eve? Or because only Anu and his side assistant, Caligastia and Dalagastia, they were able to live indefinitely. We don't know how much of the actual staff was able to live. I doubt any of the staff was alive when Adam and Eve landed.
Probably not. I think Van might have been the sole survivor this far into the future from that moment in time.
See, I just can't believe that. That's crazy. Like, only Van with the whatever, side tangent. I feel like there'd be massive wars waged over that tree.
I think so. It's like the most valuable artifact you could have in your possession.
You keep control of the planet. Whoever owns the fucking tree, if they're both able to stay alive off it. So does that mean Van was going around killing? Never mind.
Probably not.
All right.
Warren with his,
the secret story of Van and Amadon. Fucking Caligastia staff slayers.
We gotta remote view that and make the script and use AI to
we'll
make a
figure it
low
out.
budget movie.
Oh, dude, that'd be sick. Next movie scripts.
Battle for the
All
tree
right,
of life.
so thus ended the first day of Adam and Eve on isolated Urantia, the confused planet of the Caligastia betrayal. And they walked and talked far into the night, their first night on Earth, and it was so lonely. Adam's second day on Earth was spent in session
Oh,
with the
suck it up,
planetary
Adam and Eve.
receivers.
You know, a human would be like, "What?" Spit on the ground, be like, "Stop crying! Come on, just keep walking." Adam and Eve, it's so silent. First day on Urantia. Come on, let's fucking go.
Meanwhile, the native human species has just been fighting for their life against the animals and the predators, and
Exactly. Every night.
Every night.
Yeah.
don't
Like,
know how to
must
use
be
fire
really
yet. No, I think they knew how to use fire at that point, but it's still early humanity, you know.
I don't want
So-
to go on a tangent, but crazy side note that the Ranch book says that the first 2 humans to get born and ever exist on planet Earth also figured out how to create fire.
Oh,
What are
yeah,
the
yeah.
chances of that?
You're right. It was that far back.
Just right off the bat, yeah.
but
But like
it would
the
have had to
chances
get
of that are like
rediscovered
0.
potentially over different periods of
The
time.
Ranch book said it did get rediscovered multiple times. It got lost and rediscovered.
Yeah.
But like, what are the chances of the first 2 humans like figuring that out? That's kind of crazy.
They
Wasn't it
were on
lightning?
fire.
Or no?
Yeah, they saw lightning and then they mimicked it.
Yeah.
No,
or
then they
carried-
saw a spark coming from a rock on accident, and then the girl had
Made
the
that
idea.
connection.
Hmm.
Can we spark it into a bird's nest? And they did it. And just shout out to the
It's
girls.
another
Those are the
movie.
girls who
It's
actually
another movie that we need to make.
Exactly. Don't take this idea. We'll sue you. It's on YouTube. Just kidding.
That would be sick to have a little.
Oh.
Well, yeah.
Dude,
Hopefully
Legacy
AI
Media
gets
Group, what
good
do you
enough
think?
to
Dude,
like help produce
Magma
some.
knows. Magma, you guys know my entire thing. The only reason I'm into filmmaking is because I want to create the Urantia story 300 style, like
Hey.
epic.
Okay.
You know, all
Yeah.
those stories 300 style would be fire, dude.
Honestly, with the
This
way,
is
with the
the
pace
Garden
of
of
technology,
Eden. Kicks him into the fucking circle.
with the pace of technology, that may become much more realistic, much faster than we think. Like a really
Probably.
full scale, you know,
You're right.
film. And
Yeah, and we can star in it. We'll spray print abs on me like they did for the 300 characters. You know, they spray printed all those abs on them.
Yeah.
All right. So continuing on, Adam's second day on Earth was spent in session with the planetary receivers and the advisory council. From the Melchizedeks and their associates, Adam and Eve learned about the details of the Caligastia rebellion and the result of that upheaval upon the world's progress. And it was, on the whole, a disheartening story, this long recital of the mismanagement of world affairs. They learned all the facts regarding the utter collapse of the Caligastia scheme for accelerating the process of social evolution. They also arrived at a full realization of the folly of attempting to achieve planetary advancement independently of the divine plan of progression, and thus ended a sad but enlightening day, their second day on Urantia.
Well, that's crazy. So they waited to the second day to get briefed on just exactly how the Anunnaki fucked everything up.
Yeah, they probably had to get situated first.
But I just realized that sounds crazy. Sorry to my blue bookers, my Urantia book readers out there. I'm gonna do my holy cross. I found a completely false statement in the Urantia book.
What? No.
It says they also arrived at a full realization of the folly of attempting to achieve planetary advancement independent of the divine plan of progression. They did not come to a full realization because they ended up doing the exact same mistake.
Good point. They thought they
Literally
came to a
what-
full
They
realization.
thought they came to a full realization.
Fully
but-
hit them, but yeah. It's looking to went off into their own thing.
Foreshadowing. Little foreshadowing. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
The third day was devoted to an inspection of the garden. From the large passenger birds, the fan doors, Adam and Eve looked down upon the vast stretches of the garden while being carried through the air over this, the most beautiful spot on earth. This day of inspection ended with an enormous banquet in honor of all who had labored to create this garden of Edenic beauty and grandeur, and again, late into the night of their third day, the son and his mate walked in the garden and talked about the immensity of their problems.
I can't, dude. I'm pulling up the same picture right now.
You already know what I'm doing.
We are literally. I was
Chilla.
going to share. You
What's
shared
going
your
on
screen
here?
a second before me.
Beat you to it. I screen shared some. I just gotta go over
You
here.
had to.
So
You got to me, dude. I have it pulled up on my screen. That's hilarious.
just within this past decade, a new archaeological site was discovered, Göbekli Tepe, which has just broken the historical records because evidence of a somewhat advanced culture, it's unclear if it's a civilization or not, had built this concentric circular arena of artwork and storytelling. And on one of these megalithic structures, you get this handbag symbol, which is so prevalent all over the
Ooh.
ancient world.
I'm gonna
You
drop
you got some
facts
animals,
after on the handbag.
oh, please do. Down at the bottom here, you see this giant bird and what looks like a dude with an erection, and his head's missing. Now, I've heard the symbolic breakdown of this. The erection's supposed to represent fertility. The missing head is supposed to represent a deceased, mysterious, but very important figure. Why is he riding on this giant bird? Is that a Fondor? Is that somehow evidence of the Urantia book story? This could represent Adam if we're willing to make that stretch. Could that be Adam riding on a Fondor?
Yeah, so Fandors were the passenger birds. It says in that quote that Adam and Eve were able to ride on the Fandors. It just mentions the Fandors, and later it'll talk about Adam and Eve were able to ride on these passenger birds. And Göbekli Tepe is in Turkey, and the Urantia book elsewhere states that an Adamic outpost was created in Turkey. And so we find one, Göbekli Tepe, a monolithic or megalithic civilization that existed pre-Egyptian or even pre-Sumerian, pushing the date back. And it's showing Adam with his head chopped off, which means he was deceased, an ancestor, riding a big bird with a massive erection. And Adam and Eve were known. They're the biological uplifters. That's another way of saying we come in and fuck. We lay pipe and lay clams.
Now tell me about this handbag here, because in the Tree of Life depictions you see all over the ancient world, you often see.
All right, I'm sharing my screen real quick. We'll do a little side tangent.
Yeah.
So there has been a handbag found. And guess where it was found?
An actual handbag. Turkey, if I had to guess.
Urartu.
Urartu, even better. Okay.
Yep. And there it is right there for the people. But we're not going to go down that rabbit hole. Everybody always talks about the handbag and the mystery and what's it about, but there has been one found. Yeah, exactly.
What's the handbag?
It's what they depicted. You know, they walked around. I like the seed theory, how they had a bunch of seeds in there because the king was able to plant all the different seeds. But Urartu, for people who are watching, is an offshoot of the Sumerian. People would say Proto-Sumerian, or they existed along with the Sumerian civilization. But we know that because of the rebellion, Caligastia's staff, the Anunnaki split into two groups. One stayed good, one stayed bad. The bad kind of took over the planet, but the good went to Urartu around Lake Van in Turkey. So Van was the adversary of Nod. Van and Nod, we talked about Nod earlier. So that handbag picture comes from Urartu around Lake Van. So the other group of the Anunnaki. So this gives us some insight onto what that handbag, the mysterious handbag, might have been.
It lines up perfectly, because for those who haven't made the connection yet, if you're following, Van was the figure who actually met Adam and Eve at the garden. He's this almost celestial kind of human, living for like 100,000 years.
He was a good Anunnaki.
He was one of the good ones. That's right. Can't just profile every Anunnaki. They're not all the same. There are some good ones. And this guy, Van, was so highly revered that deep into the future, his name would be remembered at Lake Van. There are actually sunken ruins at the bottom of
Yep.
Lake Van because of the.
Yep.
I think the alkalinity of the waters perfectly preserved it. Truly ancient, and yeah, it's amazing. Van was the one who kind of gathered up these primitive humans and told them, "Hey, look, there are some legit celestial beings touching down here. To prepare, let's make this nice garden site and a temple for them to, resurrect their human
Yeah, dude,
bodies
imagine
in and all
finding
that."
this fool in the middle of the woods. You're with your family in the middle of the woods trying to survive, and this guy's like, "Hey, aliens are landing. Aliens are landing. Come build this garden." And you're like,
All right.
that guy's crazy. After a couple of weeks, you're like, he's nice. He's been giving us food. Let's go check it out. Fucking 1 week later, you're
And it's
in. You're
cold.
drinking the Kool-Aid. I'm part of the fucking garden, dog. I'm building the garden. And then they actually land. And then they land. And you're like, holy fuck.
Yeah.
I thought he was bullshitting, but I like the life.
It was about 100 years. So early on, the people, a couple generations later, maybe your
Generations
kids.
down. I know. It was generations, but
we're
imagine
getting
being part of
deep
that
down the rabbit
generation.
hole.
Yeah, let's keep reading. The
yeah,
people like it, though.
Yeah.
That's what we're here for.
We just solved the handbag problem, dog.
Well, we
Come on.
think people like it. Do we know? There's 6. We got 6 people. Guys, give a thumbs up.
Leave a comment.
Leave a comment in the chat, or just let us know. Yeah, what you want, the tangents, or should we just keep reading? Just feel free to say whatever. It's open, free for all.
Open mic night.
I'm gonna say this. We got only 6 likes right now and like 37 views. Someone's messing up. Check your phone, check your computer, whatever you're watching on. Press that like button for me, por favor.
Maybe you didn't press that like button hard enough.
Oh yeah, actually, yeah. It's pressure sensitive, right? You got to press it really hard. So press it really hard to make sure it really gets that YouTube algorithm.
Before these old heads are gonna break their phone screen.
Before we do move on, I do want to let the people know how they can contribute to the cause. That's right. We live in a mind, body, spirit cosmos. That means you gotta look fly. You ain't looking fresh. You don't want to walk into the club, walk into the room. People are like, damn, man, that guy looks lame. You want to look fresh, right? Sorry. Terrible bit.
That legacy swag.
Terrible bit. I was thinking of a joke, but I didn't want to say it. So I'm not going to do it on the live stream because you guys are going to be like, damn, that's fucking pretty bad. But check out the shirts. Check out the shirts. We got shirts in the description. We've been talking about them in all the episodes. Got Legacy blasted across your chest, Legacy blasted across your back. Got the logo you see in the YouTube profile picture. They're pretty sick, man. I'm not wearing it right now. I'm washing it, but Magma ain't wearing it. Nobody's wearing it. But go check it out.
I got to purchase one as well. I will get that done.
Oh, blow him up. He hasn't even bought one yet. Damn, that's crazy.
Well, or you could you gotta send me one. Send me one, bro.
Oh, you're right. Yeah, actually, you're right. I do have
legacy discount.
You're right. But this isn't a fashion commercial. This isn't a fucking ad to the thing I hate the most are people that derive their entire identity based off the animal skins or the cloths that are draped over their body. Okay. You're not any better because you're wearing a different color shirt. You're not any better because your shoes match your shirt. If we measured all of the human species and progress based off how much you match your clothes, we would be fucking nowhere. Okay. We would be our presidents would be idiots. Idiocracy, So no, I'm totally against thinking that fashion is some type of social status. I am totally for expressing yourself creatively. I take pride in my appearance. I don't want to look like a bum, but I don't derive my entire identity from how I decorate my physical body. That's so corny. Why? Like, come on. But that being said, we do got legacy shirts. Seriously, honestly, it's really just to support the cause. They're $30. It costs us $21 to manufacture them, so we're only making a $9 profit. That $9 goes to us. We're trying to get a legacy app and a legacy building. This app will be like social media. Instead of getting upvoted for having a nice ass or having a Ferrari or having a lot of money or having a lot of diamonds, you'll get upvoted. You won't get upvoted. You'll, I guess, gain points by growing mentally, physically, and spiritually. And that will be compounded if you meet up with other legacy members on the app and you guys all grow together. If you guys go on a walk, on a nature walk, and get a picture of a cool mushroom while you're on the walk and you post that, then, you know, the points will get compounded. We're working on everything right now. So you can contribute to helping everybody have mind, body, spirit progress in their pocket. We're trying to change social media because right now we're really suffering from the consequences that it's doing to our population. So let's try to use the infrastructure to create an environment that's conducive to mind, body, spirit progress. And that's what we're trying to do. So you can be a part of that. I know you're busy. You got kids. You're working a job. It's hard for you to fucking put on your combat boots and run over to the Legacy headquarters and join. But if you buy a shirt, that $9 will help us get the message out to the front lines. So go check out the shirts. The shirts are in the description. I know it was a long soliloquy. It was a monologue. I'm so sorry about that. Let's get back into the fucking chapter. D-Bake, you're such an asshole for talking about shirts for that long. I know, I get it, but go check them out.
You can represent the cause. You'll be happy to kind of walk around and advertise the Foundation for Human Progress. You can be a part of the team. We are building the future. You are building the future.
Just like these Anunnaki fools in the middle of the woods are over here building the garden ready for the next celestial to land. That sounds crazy, but guess what? You can be part of the next wave. Like what we're talking about, CE5, and we're talking about disclosure. UFOs are real. To us, that's that next celestial event. But what we're reading to these people in the woods, their CE5, their space brothers, their UFOs was Adam and Eve. When the Anunnaki people were getting ready, they were waiting for the people to come. So you get what I'm trying to say? This is our moment. So buy a damn shirt and be and fucking help clear the LZ and build the next garden for the fucking next celestial landing.
That's right.
Yeah, and I noticed earlier when it talked about the voice of Gabriel ringing out at a roll call. This is kind of going back a few steps. Yeah. I had a thought in my head. I was like, I wonder. It kind of makes it sound like it was heard audibly. Like, did the humans hear it, or maybe it wasn't? Maybe it was only hearable from like celestial circuits point of view. But yeah, I don't know. It's just the idea that basically, you know, during the different stages, large stages and epochs, like the arrival of Adam and Eve, they also do, you know, something called roll calls, where they basically take the souls, the consciousness,
good
you know,
point.
That had basically died. You know, you kind of like you can't really make it off the planet after death. It's even debated on how much awareness you have after you die. Even all like the secret lineages and traditions, they always talk, like, you know, the Eastern and the South American, they talk about like, oh, you need to prepare for death because it's difficult. You know, the shamanic perspectives, like you'll lose your awareness. Anyway,
the
all
Egyptian.
that. Yeah, Egyptians talked about it too. It's basically like, from the psychic point of view, it's been observed that you have a very small window after death of awareness, and there's different ways that maybe you can extend some of it. But the basic premise is that, like, you generally go and you start losing consciousness, and you become, this is after your physical body dies, and you're sort of basically unconscious, but you're still on the planet. And when I say you, what I mean is your mind, whatever energy is left in your consciousness, is sort of like existing somewhere on the planet. And in order to actually like wake up and sort of remember anything and survive into eternity, you need to be taken off the planet into the mansion worlds, into the afterlife, where you are resurrected into a new type of body that is not purely physical, doesn't suffer from the decay of the physical mortal, you know, bodies that we had before. So yeah, that was a thing that happened when Adam and Eve arrived, and it talked about the roll call of the angels initiating that. So it's just a cool event to know about. I'm not sure if it would be visible to the mortals if another event like that were to occur, but I think that some part of us may feel some difference. I don't know, because it happens during epochal events, but it's a side tangent. So let's just continue reading.
It is. I do want to touch on it because I do want to go a little bit for the Urantia book readers. I want to go Majestic 12 on them because they know what I'm talking about. You're right. So it says we are already in quarantine. Then the voice of Gabriel decreed, and it says the proclamation, the archangel's proclamation, the broadcast voice of Gabriel was heard. But we know that there is quarantine, and we just read before that the celestial circuits were cut off. So there's normally this reflectivity mechanism, or that we can use for on a normal planet for receiving information. But we know elsewhere in the Urantia book it says because that was cut off, they used the archangel messaging circuit because it was different, remember? And they had an archangel divisional headquarters on Urantia, which is also something we have to put under a magnifying glass later, not now. So it's even saying here that message had to come over the archangel circuit because then it was heard, the archangel's proclamation, like I'm sure, so that message came in. The archangel's proclamation, the broadcast voice of Gabriel on the judgment roll call. And that's a great point that you bring to the table, Techilla. Every time a celestial being lands, they bring up a bunch of dead souls up to Orion, up to the mansion worlds. So pretty much depending on your mind, body, spirit level, you either A, die, and after 3 Earth days, you directly go to the mansion worlds, Orion, or B, you die and you get put into like a little holding cell. I don't want to call it purgatory, but the Catholics and the Christians, yeah, they have like a similar concept. Yeah, you get saved and you have to wait for what they call a resurrection roll call or judgment roll call or dispensational roll call. That's what the Urantia book calls it. So, and it happens, but every time a celestial lands. So everybody who died, every human being who died so when the Anunnaki landed, every human being who died after the Anunnaki landed, if they weren't good enough, if they didn't hit the mind, body, spirit levels to go on the 3rd day, they went to sleeping survivor. They all were sleeping for thousands of years. And then when Adam and Eve landed, they all woke up in mass. They all got graduated en masse to Orion, to the mansion worlds. So there's 2 different ways you can do it. Thank you for bringing that up. It's just another concept that I think the people should understand, that there is different ways to wake up in heaven, in the next dimension, in the next universal platform, universal university. But this coincides with when celestials land.
You're kind of stimulating some thoughts in my mind, the both of you bringing up this subject, because why are there sleeping survivors? And I know just from the description the Urantia book gives us, the entire universe, everything about it is very...
Why are there sleeping survivors? Because a lot of dumb fucks out there. That's why.
Well, yeah, but like everything is very utilitarian. There's nothing very whimsical about it. Even the
you're right. You're
the
right.
infrastructure of the afterlife. So it kind of makes me think like you have your soul. Your soul is kind of encoded with all the information of your life and your personality and who you are. When you die, that soul is preserved. We're indwelt with this spark of infinity, this thought adjuster, this fragment of the infinite Father. And that is actually what kind of transmits our soul up into the next stage of reality, the Urantia world. So the fact that some of us wake up after, that 3-day express, kind of like the Tibetan Book of the Dead touches on.
3-day express.
Yeah. And some of us are just like in stasis.
Trying to hop on the 3-day express.
Yeah, we're trying to get that 3-day. Some of us, maybe a lot of us perhaps, are kind of in stasis, and it kind of makes me think there are like high priority people, like P1s, based on their value, if you had some degree of attunement with your thought adjuster in this life, and it seems like you might be able to serve an immediate function right when you wake up.
In the cosmos. Okay, so you're saying like if you
Yeah.
ain't got value, nigga, you going to sleep.
Yeah,
We only
maybe
wake
that
the people up who have. That's crazy.
kinda,
Though.
yeah, like
So
maybe you're kinda
99% of the
expedited.
people are fucking literally worthless.
Well, because the analogy I like to kind of form in my
Sorry, guys.
mind is, you know, on a strand of DNA, you got that RNA synthesis where you have this molecular machine that goes over and it copies a duplicate of your DNA that floats up and it gets folded into a protein that floats, you
Here's
know,
the
out of the
Magna Sloth
nucleus.
explanation.
And that protein serves a valuable function. But it kind of makes me think like if we aren't that protein that's going to serve a valuable function when we're like rematerialized, maybe we're actually a lot of baggage because we got to wake up on the first mansion world and go through rehabilitation and all this stuff. So we're actually
You're
demanding
such an
more
asshole.
resources.
Wow.
I mean, yeah,
It's giving me such a mental picture
Burden
of
on the
kind of a rough
system.
way to
angels are
put
like,
it,
these
but
motherfuckers, can they just God damn it. But that comes with being a rebellious sector and being a new in the evolutionary scheme.
yeah.
But you're right. Like I wonder if angels have like a point, like where they're like, yo, this is going on for a little bit too long. We're getting annoyed. Whatever.
But
Side
you
tangent.
can also think of it like it's kind of like schools and classes. So like, yeah, by segmenting it like that, where they bring people at certain epochs and wake them back up, you know, you do sort of like,
Oh,
you
okay.
know how
So,
many students are coming
I
on
get it.
next, rather than just because otherwise it would just flex in the universe based on the population and the death
You're
rate.
right. So they're trying to control
So
numbers. And
there's
like
a bit of a
stopgap it.
control of number. But actually, I think we're thinking about this in reverse. That may be a technical explanation of something they planned for, but I think the primary explanation here is that because the angels are not, the angels don't define why we go to sleep. They just take the sleepers at certain periods, you know, up to heaven. That's what Urantia tells us. So
You're right.
the reason why we fall
responding to
asleep,
it.
yeah, to me, the reason why we fall asleep is that there's a narrative in religion that you've been taught that you were created to be eternal, or like you basically were created with eternal life and you either spend it in heaven or hell. But this is sort of a misconception where I see it more like we are created as animal beings with the potential to survive into eternity based on if we want to take on and search for eternal values. So the thing is that like you don't have the momentum to make it to heaven on your own because you are like just above an animal consciousness. You know, just like where we say, you know, the lower animals can't go to heaven, partly because their mental capacity, the way that their mind ties in with the greater universal mind, they don't have the capacity to remain an individual after death. And so we're like just at the cusp of that remaining individual because we start as animals basically. We are in the animal kingdom. And so we have the capacity to know God because we're like the most complex of the animals. You know, there's a level to it. But like, no, we are not created as eternal beings right from the start. We have the potential if we so choose. And during that choosing process, the more eternal values that we take on while we're actually here in the flesh, it talks about how that builds up a momentum. They call it spiritual gravity. And they say that spiritual gravity, because all physical gravity comes from God, the Father, or you could say from the center of the universe, you know, it comes from the consciousness that began the universe. We call that God. And all the physical gravity is a sort of gradient that comes after that. So remember, so spiritual gravity and consciousness is stronger. So you're an animal being, but your consciousness can be spiritualized. The more spiritualized it becomes, you're like, you have more momentum. You can sort of like, I don't know how to describe it because it seems like I'm describing it in terms of like energy limitations. And I think that's only partly the answer. I think it's that you really don't have the energy to retain self-awareness after death. But by spiritualizing yourself, you build a type of spiritual energy or momentum and, you know, you're
I
basically
think you build your own sovereign gravity.
yeah. Yeah, it's we're on the cusp of philosophical and technical in terms of what is happening on the spiritual, I guess, dimensions. Um, but yeah, I mean, if you don't think this is real, but you believe in the Bible and stuff, I just want to point you towards two unique cases, and that would be Enoch and Elijah, who were taken up in chariots of fire. And so that would be an example of sort of specialized cases where they didn't survive and die a normal human death. They were just taken, right like that. It says chariot of fire because that's I guess that's probably what it looks like if a human were to observe that leaving of planet Earth. But that's just an example. And people think like they don't want to think in terms of like your experience in heaven is based on how good you were, or that there's like scales. I mean, it's weird. There's the idea of scales and judgment, but then there's also this idea of equality in heaven. But when we're talking about like some people get sent up right away and some don't, like how does that kind of mesh here? Well, if you think of the universe like a school, that's a better way to perceive this. It's not that the lower classes are less valuable than the higher classes, but there is a class. You learn specific spiritual lessons at different times in your life, and that process continues into heaven. And some people are learning a simpler lesson in their period of time that you've already learned, and so you can move on to the next class. That's what we're talking about. The universe is a career, it's a class. And there's time, time is just a tool to learn.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Anything else, or we continue on?
Let's continue on.
No, I was just about to say I can't follow that.
Spiritual
It's
on the
like when you
fourth
get
day
it's
here.
like when you get like a good like a comedy set and someone who's good has a good set before yours. You're like, what the fuck? I got to follow that.
Yeah, I can't follow that up.
Yeah. No, that's
So we're on the fourth day.
that. Because when we go on monologues like this, there's always a tiny voice in the back of your head where it's like, am I going too long? Am I talking? Is this vibing with people? But like if you catch that inspiration train, I feel it. When it comes on and it kind of goes off, and I guess I hit it.
actually have a mental image of that, and it's like at different times of the stream, one of us could be channeling. So it's like when the channel hits, let it happen. It'll over, and then your turn will come soon. All that shit.
Message incoming.
Exactly. Jesus was a shrimper.
Jesus was a shrimper, not a fisher.
All right. So who's
Fourth
reading?
day.
You still reading?
I was still reading, bro. Yeah, I think we're exposing a little too much, but it's still good content, so whatever. But as far as following the story, we are kind of breaking the flow a little bit. So
all right,
whatever. Subscribe or unsubscribe, I don't give a shit.
Unlike and unsubscribe.
Yeah, dude. Actually, no. The new shit is how many unsubscribers you have. So
we got millions.
Get me into the negative.
On the fourth day, Adam and Eve addressed the garden assembly. From the inaugural mount, they spoke to the people concerning their plans for the rehabilitation of the world and outlined the methods whereby they would seek to redeem the social culture of Urantia from the low levels to which it had fallen as a result of sin and rebellion. This was a great day, and it closed with a feast for the council of men and women who had been selected to assume responsibilities in the new administration of world affairs. Take note. Wow. Women as well as men were in this group, and it was the first time such a thing had occurred on Earth since the days of Dalmatia. It was an astounding innovation to behold Eve, a woman, sharing the honors and responsibilities of world affairs with a man, and thus ended the fourth day on Earth.
Nice.
Sorry over here, anybody who's practicing that bullshit. Men run the household. The girl better listen to what I'm saying. All that bullshit, dog. Yeah, I'm over here. You know me. Masculine as fuck. Oozing that shit. If you're thinking like that, you're not masculine. Male and female are equal. That's right. I'm about to dye my hair purple and go protest in the streets. That's right. You can't even, I'm breaking your mind right now. You can't perceive the mixture of the two concepts, right? In the bush, I'm going to ambush you. Full camo at the same time. Equality. Woman get a say. Got my hair purple, dyed to the back, you know? No, I'm just.
I'll just say, men can build a house, but it takes a woman to make it a home.
Oh my God, every fucking time. You love that quote, dude. It's your favorite shit. But you're right. You are correct. Take note, women as well as men were in this group. A council that was ran by celestials, Adam and Eve. Just stop. Straight up stop. As long as one sex tries to dominate or rule over the other sex, we are considered a primitive planet. That's all I'm trying to say. That's all I'm trying to say. I'll make woman jokes all day on this channel. I'll make guy jokes all day on this channel, but you know what I believe. I'm saying it out in the open right now. It's beautiful how they say it. Take note. A woman and men sharing the honors and responsibilities of an entire planet. It's pretty cool, right?
Pretty cool.
Fifth day was occupied with the organization of the temporary government, the administration which was to function until the Melchizedek receivers should leave Urantia. The sixth day was devoted to an inspection of the numerous types of men and animals. Along the walls eastward in Eden, Adam and Eve were escorted all day, viewing the animal life of the planet and arriving at a better understanding as to what must be done to bring order out of the confusion of a world inhabited by such a variety of living creatures. It greatly
so something about the Urantia book that you need to focus on is when they just paragraph break like that. One thing that should set off your mind immediately. Every time they do that, they usually it's like they're held back by red tape. They cryptically mention something and then they shift over to another subject.
Yeah.
The fifth day was occupied with the organization of the temporary government. That's what I'm most interested in, the temporary government, because that allows unorthodox missions to be done, new missions, emergency missions to be done. I'm not going to pull a quote right now, but in the Urantia, elsewhere it says that pretty much on Urantia, it's so messed up that the planetary leaders are using and employing emergency, unorthodox, special operations in order to, I think it even implies to get the newer generations into building the cosmic kingdom. I'll pull a quote before the end of the night, but
okay.
It's interesting, you know.
But yeah,
temporary
good catch.
government.
It's one of those things that's very easy to read right past and forget about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, we just read about the sixth day. It greatly surprised those who accompanied Adam on this trip to observe how fully he understood the nature and function of the thousands upon thousands of animals shown to him. The instant he glanced at an animal, he would indicate its nature and behavior. Adam could give names descriptive of their origin, nature, and function of all material creatures on sight. Those who conducted him on this tour of inspection did not know that the world's new ruler was one of the most expert anatomists of all Satania, and Eve was equally proficient. Adam amazed his associates by describing a host of living things too small to be seen by human eyes. When the sixth day of their sojourn on earth was over, Adam and Eve rested for the first time in their new home in the east of Eden. The first 6 days of the Urantia adventure had been very busy, and they looked forward with great pleasure to an entire day of freedom from all activities.
Seventh day.
I wanted to point out here this talk about Adam knowing the behavior and giving names. That should ring a bell in your head, because in Genesis, it's Adam who names the animals. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Oh, good.
Yeah,
right.
it is.
Wow.
It is Adam who names the animals in Genesis. Yeah.
And so you should kind of question, how could in Genesis, there's a lot of missing questions. I guess when Adam and Eve got created by God, they already had a language because they named the animals. Like, did they have a language? How did that work?
How'd
There's
that
all these
happen? Yeah.
questions that didn't. But now, again, we're getting this story unfolded before our eyes. There was a language. In fact, Adam and Eve came here. They had to study the native human language first because they were going to interact with the humans. But they also had their own language, which they brought, from the celestial worlds. I mean, they were old. They were over 15,000 years old. Who knows how many languages they knew? But point being, this like it makes sense now. Genesis is like this summary. There's these elements in Genesis that are actually tied to real events, and that is literally the definition of mythologizing truth. True historical events get changed, or they get summarized and carried as a myth. It's pointing to some historical facts. There's also symbolic meanings being transferred, throughout time and history based on who's telling the story, what they're trying to convey, what is most important to them, the conveyors of the story throughout each age. And it's just, to me, when I read this, to get the expanded, like blown apart, full commentary on what the meanings in Genesis are is so profound that, like, that's why this is called a revelatory text, because it is revealing things we wouldn't have known or would have been totally lost to history. So to me, that is like highly adventurous. It also saves a lot of time because it's so hard to figure this stuff out for ourselves. And, it's kind of being given, but you do have to have your own spiritual drive to be curious about finding this type of information. And we know y'all in the chat have that drive. So thanks for being here.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Real quick. Hertak says we're suffering from history being mythologized or mytholicized, and mythology being historicized.
Well, I mean, like, the myth is a way to take an event and compress it into a little package that's very easily told as a story and remembered, that can be passed down generations later. And thankfully, with Revelation, we can take that revelatory refresher and decompress that myth, and now we have evidence from thousands of years ago that the story was preserved. It's interesting that Adam knew the different types of animals, even though it was his first time on Earth. Kind of gives the impression in my mind that there are similar patterns that unfold on other worlds, even if they're, it's totally alien biology, very different atmosphere and pressure and gravity and all that. There could be alien alligators and alien giraffes and alien fish. It's just like similar patterns of animals that serve similar ecological roles, but they might look completely different, but you would still recognize that as like a shark with 6 eyes or something like that.
Yeah. And I actually found that quote I was talking about before.
Nice.
So back referring to that paragraph break, the fifth day was occupied with the organization of temporary government and the administration, which was to function until the Melchizedek receivers should leave Urantia. So that's talking about, special emergency temporary missions. This is from paper 110. For many thousands of years, so the records of Jerusalem show, in each generation there have lived fewer and fewer beings who could function safely with self-acting adjusters. This is an alarming picture. And the supervising personalities of Satania look with favor upon the proposals of some of your more immediate planetary supervisors, who advocate the inauguration of measures designed to foster and conserve the higher spiritual types of the Urantia races. Which is giving you a little insight on that the higher ups in the plan, we think about this high divine plan that can't be broken. In that paragraph, it says, no, they're actually starting to delegate down to the lower, our immediate planetary supervisors. That could be the planetary seraphic government head. That could be the midwayer head. You know, they're putting it on their shoulders to say, hey, come up with a plan. What's the special mission? This is an emergency operation. How can we get this done? And what does that look like? Does that look like a bunch of podcasts? A bunch of, you know, they're making it work behind the scenes. You know what I'm trying to say? So like,
Yeah.
they're deploying special operations, unorthodox methods to get the planet back on the rails. And it's interesting to see how that would play out. That's like literally special forces type shit. How do you do it in the midst of a bunch of bullshit? How do you make it happen?
They're adapting to the situation live. It's not just
exactly
a mechanical plan like winding up a clock, letting it run its course. They're constantly having to respond to emergencies and situations.
Yeah.
Hence,
so join the Legacy today, baby. You could be a part of it.
Yeah. I mean, you could argue this book being dropped in the 30s, the celestial agencies on this world could kind of see the forecast of the spiritual situation unfolding throughout the late 1800s, early 1900s. They're like, all right, we really need something right now. It'll take some time, you know, humans got to work out their geopolitics and all that. But when we're ready for it, we can kind of step up our religious and spiritual understanding.
Magma, your audio is back to how it was before. I'm not sure if anything changed, but I want to read this last paragraph, and then we should also assess here. We're about to hit the 2-hour point, and it's actually going to be midnight for me. So after this, we can let's just do an outro right after this last paragraph, and you know, we'll get that part 2, you know, stream, you know, for all the viewers in the chat, maybe next week, or I don't know if we'll space it out, but.
Yeah, but it is crazy how they're mishmashing the 6 days of creation with the Adam and Eve story. Like you're seeing it just get like melded together over thousands of years, and then we're getting that in our Bible.
Yeah. Now, actually, I mean, there's an interesting quote in the Urantia book that talks about how it was wise of Moses. Maybe you can pull that quote. It was wise of Moses to not over-explain the early history of man. It makes it sound like Moses may have been responsible for some of the early like Old Testament, and he possibly, with his knowledge from Egypt, from the Egypt's archive, he actually made the summary. It's in this paper.
Oh, it's in this paper.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, all right.
Yeah, it's 74.8, so we're not there. It'll be in the next live stream, guys. Sorry.
We'll go over it then.
If we really wanted to skip over real quick, it says in his early teachings, Moses very wisely did not attempt to go back of Adam's time. And since Moses was the supreme teacher of the Hebrews, the stories of Adam became intimately associated with those of creation. Exactly, Tachula, you pulled it directly out of your mind.
It's like compression.
That the earlier traditions recognize pre-Adamic civilization is clearly shown by the fact that later editors, intending to eradicate all reference to human affairs before Adam's time, neglected to remove the telltale reference to Cain's emigration to the land of Nod, where he took himself a wife. Yep, straight up good connection, Tachula. Yeah, we talked about that in the beginning, so
that's why earlier I was
understand.
talking about how Moses may have been a major contributor to the Old
he was
Testament.
A major contributor,
and that's what the Christians think as well.
Major, yeah.
They say, I mean, they even say that they put him as the writer of the first 5. But I know that the textual analysts say that there's like a couple different writers. So again, it could, it's over different periods of time. But this is also asserting that Moses had a large role in propagating some of these core teachings, but he didn't try to go. It said that he didn't try to go all the way back to the days of Adam and Eve, right? So it sounds
he didn't go pre-Adamic.
Oh, he didn't go pre-Adamic. So even let's say he did. So that means he started kind of with talking about the Adamic era of civilization, And so this is probably why Genesis starts with Adam and Eve being the first people, because
but it's
that was the
crazy
main
that
teaching about Adam and Eve.
But in order to not go pre-Adamic, it means you must have knowledge of pre-Adamic civilization.
Right, and that's crazy too. Well, again, think of it.
And then
Moses was in Egypt, and Egypt has long been known to have forbidden ancient knowledge. I think he had access. He obviously had access to the Egyptian schools and libraries and knowledge, and that's an ancient old culture. I don't know how long we know that the civilization of Egypt was thriving without any major upheavals, but like, we know that they were an advanced culture. They have the pyramids, which we don't really know how they built. There's a lot of stuff, and mysteries about that. And so, yeah, it's just curious that Moses was so involved with Egypt, and he, became the teacher of these ancient knowledge. Yeah, because I don't actually think
do a focus on Moses, dude, because he's such an interesting character.
That'd be a good one.
Yeah,
some people say he could be Akhenaten's brother.
Oh yeah, I like that. Yeah,
he was Tutmosis before he was Tutmosis, and he dropped the Tut.
You talked about how technically the story started with Abraham, which is true in the context that the nation of Israel and all the kids that came from his lineage, and the teachings of Melchizedek about God the Father started with him. But there's still a lot of years in between, and there's a question of like how much written content was Abraham's lineage written down.
Moses had more. Written down.
I think Moses probably had more, and that's why it says that later on.
You said the first five. He wrote the Pentateuch, which is like the basis of Hebrew religion. Pentagon, think of 5. Pentateuch, it's like 5 books. He wrote. There's a lot more of Moses' record is alive today than Abraham's records. But
was he initiated into the mystery schools of Egypt? I don't know. Did
he son his perineum every night? Probably
did he son his perineum? I mean, with the Jews' contact in Egypt for that time, there's no doubt they would have kind of absorbed a lot of the Egyptian mysteries of the time and integrated that into their, Jewish mysticism and all that. It's pretty interesting because the Egyptians kind of had a very well-preserved version of some of the oldest stories mankind had to tell. And the Hebrew people were able to kind of take that and run with it and adapt it to their own and kind of polish it.
All right, I'll hit this last paragraph, and we'll maybe talk a little bit more, and then get this outro. So,
sounds good.
So this is after the 6th day. But circumstances dictated otherwise. The experience of the day just past, in which Adam had so intelligently and so exhaustively discussed the animal life on Urantia, together with his masterly inaugural address and his charming manner, had so won the hearts and overcome the intellects of the garden dwellers that they were not only wholeheartedly disposed to accept the newly arrived son and daughter of Gerizim as rulers, but the majority were about ready to fall down and worship them as gods. Wow.
Oh, already in the first week,
the native peoples.
There was a massive, Let's end it there. I know that's a cliffhanger right there, but to us, it's more of a cliffhanger to the people watching it because they're like, okay, whatever. Yeah, they're about to worship him. But because we know the UB in its entirety, we know how big of a that is. We'll explain it more. The next paragraph will actually dramatize it extremely well so that you will feel what we're talking about. But this is a major no-no. Adam and Eve, they're fucking celestial templates of the Heavenly Father manifest to the evolutionary mortals on planet Earth. They're literally gods incarnate to us cavemen. They have all the sovereignty that is bestowed to them. They're thousands, million-year-old beings, and yet they refuse to accept to be worshipped. That is saying a lot.
No, not me.
That's what
him.
Yeah, exactly. And that's exactly what this last paragraph is saying. It's foreshadowing. They were not only wholeheartedly disposed to accept the newly arrived son and daughter of Jerusalem as rulers, But the majority of the normal humans on Earth were about ready to fall down and worship them as gods. And from an Adam and Eve point of view, if they land and see that happening, they know the planet is so fucked up, it's like beyond repair. Because, yeah, no planetary population should be reacting like that. They should know not to worship Adam and Eve. Adam and Eve are just personalities on the chain of command. You never worship anybody but the Father. If somebody is worshiping anybody but the Father in the cosmos, you know immediately that's a dangerous zone, borderline rebellious zone.
Yeah,
Obviously, these are cavemen people, so you got to give them some leeway. But I'm trying to paint the picture and how drastic this is. This must have shooken the Adam and Eve to their core. Like, what the fuck? They're worshiping us? These people have not been taught at all, and it really sets in that, oh, we're on a backwards planet.
I mean,
that's that cliffhanger.
Even Jesus Christ, the Son of Man, God incarnate, referred to himself as our brother. He referred to us as his brother. He's like, just refer to me as your older brother. We worship the same Father, our Heavenly Father, the Creator that made all of us. So, I mean, that's pretty wild. It's basically God incarnate telling us, when you're going to worship God, worship the highest on the entire hierarchy, the creator of everything, not just some personality down here.
Yeah, and so don't think Adam and Eve are some weird ETs that came in and started interfering with humans. No, they refused to be worshipped as gods, no matter, even though they were way higher than us on the scale. They said, you don't worship me, we all worship him. And that was the lesson they were trying to instill. Now let's rewind it back 250,000 years and go to the Anunnaki. They didn't do that. They should have done that, but they didn't do that. They actually started accepting worship from the local tribes. And that was the rebellion.
That's right.
But whatever. We'll pick it up next time. I hope you guys had a good night with us tonight. I had fun. I ate some tacos on the side. If you guys didn't notice, I was trying to keep it off screen, but I ate some tacos, drank a couple beers. I'm feeling good. I love this story, dude. Adam and Eve. My heart was pounding so much when I first read this. I'm like, oh my God, this is it. Here it is. This is the real deal. Fucking celestial beings that came down and helped us, biologically uplifted us. I know we went onto some side tangents today and we didn't really get to the full story, but you liked what we talked about. We did reveal a lot of cool truths, and I'm kind of glad we did this, so this kind of gives us a couple more live streams we can vibe off of. I'm sure you guys enjoyed the ride, so hit that subscribe button. Am I going to talk about the shirts for another 20 minutes? No. Go buy a shirt. Only $21 to manufacture them for us. It's only $30 for you, $21 to manufacture for us. Only $9 profit. That's all we're making. Go check them out. You can rep the Legacy and you can help us change the planet. I'm not going to do another monologue, but Mind, Body, Spirit app in everybody's pocket. Changing social media. Sending a planet Earth spirit up on a rocket. Do I have to start rapping right now? No, I'm not going to rap right now. But I'm saying go check out them shirts. Press the like button. Help us get to the front page. And for the 600th time, hit this fucking subscribe button. Excuse my French. Pardon me. Sorry, Jesus. I ain't going to make it to the Mansion Worlds. My brothers, Tay Chilla, Magma Sloth. You're not just tuned in right now, dog. You're going to see us in the Mansion World after you die too, fool. So now you're locked in. You're stuck with us. You're stuck with us. So join the Legacy. You might as well. Go buy a shirt. But like I say, I love saying it. Fuck a shirt. I don't give a shit about them shirts. You're $9. It really is not doing much. It's helping us. But we want you to literally be a radiating beacon of mind, body, spirit progress to every single person in your life around you. I would be so much happier if you never bought a shirt and you went out and you started helping others become the best they could be mentally, physically, and spiritually. I understand if you're busy, like I said before, and you can just buy a shirt, $9 contribution. That's fine. But man, Tachilla and Magma both know me. If you gave me $9 in my hand and looked in my face and didn't do your mind, body, spirit progress, I'd throw that $9 on the fucking ground. I'd try to punch you. All I'm saying is, contribute if you want, but I want you to feel the vision. We're not here to get the money. We're not here, fuck that. We're here to try to literally get you to be the best mentally, physically, and spiritually because our planet is fucked. So join the mission. I said I was going to do it for 5 minutes, plug the shirt, but I fucking just did it, and you're not going to stop me because it's my channel. Go buy a shirt. Hit that subscribe button. Hit the like button. Magma Sloth, Tachilla, give the people some words. Make them sleep nice tonight. Where are they going to meet us in the dream state?
At the hill on Eden. We'll be hanging out in that celestial Edenic realm. So, get some Z's. You might see us there. Stay curious. Don't let dogma keep you from exploring the truth out there. I mean, like, what's important is,
Get you.
the golden rule, the brotherhood of man and the fatherhood of God. That's what's important. Jesus taught us everything we need to know. And I believe God didn't put us here just to remain complacent. We're here in this imperfect world to make it a better place. So that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
Amen, brother.
Thanks for watching, everyone. It's always a blast here. We try a lot of different types of shows, and Forbidden Scrolls is definitely one of the ones that we always vibe with. That we always know we can kill it. We're reading, we're riffing, we're commenting. But definitely check out our other content. We got a lot of other stuff, a lot of different types of live streams. And we're trying to hit 50,000 subscribers by the end of this year. It's on the table. It's the number that was in my head when I first said it. I didn't have any other numbers. I wasn't like, let's just get 10,000. I was like 50,000. So, we're going to learn what does it take to grow like that? What does it take? We're not trying to like tell you what is absolute truth. On a mortal planet, we are stuck in many relativities here. But I think what we can convey and what I think the viewers get from us is that sense of inspiration and adventure. Think of all of the cool animated movies and adventures you watch, or just, the normal adventure movies, non-animated stuff. Just think about what it takes, like when it has an epic character arc and story, and the way that they adventure and explore and discover and unravel the mystery, and like there's different characters that have different backgrounds, and when they first meet, when they're building the Avengers team, they're like clashing, they're fighting with each other, there's a little bit of tension, but then as they work and solve problems and discover things, they kind of grow together, and they end up being able to accomplish something way bigger than any of the individuals. They grow personally, they grow as a group. They also unite the planet and everyone they come into contact with. It's the band of heroes. It's the dream. It's like, it's not just in the movie. We pull those stories and that psychology from real people. Mahatma Gandhi did it. That's why he lives in history. If I had a list of other people in my head, I'd keep riffing off, but that's the example. So, Yoda did it too. He trained the Jedi. He trained the Jedi, and so
a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. That's historical document.
Yeah, and honestly, a long time ago on a Urantia, very close to us, something equally strange as Star Wars occurred, and it's still occurring now.
There was two other rebellions.
Oh,
in the galaxy far, far away. You know what I mean?
That's right.
Coruscant is a rebellious planet, rebellious sector. That's why there's Sith. The Sith.
That's right.
God damn. You came here for the tangents. Come on, let's be real.
Anyway, yeah, I mean to close it out, to stop talking. Just okay, amidst these crazy stories that we're talking about, I want to point out again about that thing about spiritual values, the importance of spiritual values. you could read all the crazy Adam and Eve stories that you want, and you could still have zero spiritual values. This is more about what do we learn from these stories. Even if we're not sure if they're 100% real or not, we don't need to know if it's 100% real or not. We don't need to make absolute statements. But what we can learn is relative values, meanings, and concepts that help us create a temporary worldview that we use to live and better our lives. And I say temporary because, like, imagine after death. Once you die physically and it gets proved to you that there is an afterlife, that there is more to learn, all your worldview is going to change. Everything you learned on Earth, including everything you read in the Urantia book, is going to be revamped and restyled on a scale much larger. So remember, all knowledge is temporary and is just a perspective. It's a scaffolding. It's through a lens, through a limited lens. And so what we're trying to do, what I try to do on this planet is I want to continually upgrade my scaffolding. I want to get better lenses. I want to get less distortion on the lens of truth that I'm looking through. And that's why we have the Forbidden Scrolls. That's why we're reading all of these texts. You know, if you grew up with a very institutional, like kind of the strictness of religion, you weren't introduced to external truths or philosophies. The theology was already set and given to you and passed on. And that's because people, they're trying to preserve the meaning that has existed throughout culture. Respect that, but also know that you are a sovereign, independent being with a fragment, with a direct mental connection to God, and even a part of God, the image of God in man that lives inside of you. So always remember that, because your personal inspiration and your growth, it supersedes what the group is trying to put onto you and tell you what you should be doing. And the Adam and Eve story is a great example of all of those things at play. So join us on the next stream or the next stream whenever we do a part 2. Hope you've enjoyed this episode, and that's all I got.
Fuck yeah, dog. I hope you guys recognize what you just heard. I'm over here saying planetary isolation. Who? Planetary isolation. What? After you just heard what he just said, planetary isolation should be a thing of the past. That's where we're getting at you. That's where we're trying to come at you. Live. Forbidden Scrolls live. All right. Let's say goodbye to the people. Good night.
Yep. Peace.
Good night, everybody.
All right. I hit end on YouTube. We're supposed to wait a little bit before